Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Kane's independent media production. Today, very important topic. Do your drums all need to look the same for them to be a good sounding kit? I remember in my first kit, them all looking the same and thinking, that's a great looking set of drums. And then I remember seeing some kits in studios and in photos of studios and being like, those all don't match. We wanted to get into today the thing of going after sounds and realizing that you can actually ignore a lot of the things that we worry about so much in terms of continuity between the drums, and realize that if you're just going after sounds, either it's making the sound or it isn't. And if we kind of squint and forget that everything about all of these is totally different, they actually make a great set of sounds together that I chose on purpose to make a collective sound that I wanted to go after today. We're going to do a weird list right now. All the things that are different about every drum on this kit. Let's see. The shells are different. The shell thicknesses are different. The finishes are different. We have wrap, glossy, and matte satin. The hoops are all different. Let's see. The brands are all different. The heads are all different. Is that it? There might even be more things than that. But suffice to say, even there's a 2-ply on the rack and a 1-ply on the floor. Like, what? But the thing is, if it makes the sound you want, then none of this matters. And we need to be thinking of, right, also the bass drum is 50 or 60 years old and the other two are fairly modern. Coming to the studio today, I was thinking about how I wanted to imagine a collective sound from the kit that I wanted to make that we didn't have a kit here that would specifically make those sounds, be it because of sizes or heads or whatever it was. And what I decided on was kind of like an electro pop thing where I wanted the toms basically just above like a growl, like they're as low as they will go. I wanted a dead snare sound, but loud enough to get through the mix. And I wanted a boomy bass drum, sort of an inverted thing from a lot of pop music where you think about boomy big toms and then like a dead kick. We're going to kind of go the other way and try to find my way into some of these kind of like modern electro sounds that maybe after a little bit of production become super powerful and almost sound like samples, but they're definitely not samples. For those of you interested, all of the playing examples in their completion will be on the Patreon later on, along with mixed versions of them, which sort of give you an idea of what we would do with these sounds if we were actually trying to put them on a record versus just showing you the acoustic sounds here in the room. So without further ado, let's hear how all this stuff sounds. Now, why did I choose these drums? Like, we understand the tuning, I kind of talked about that, but why choose these drums? Well, let's see. A 12 and a 14, if I tune them as low as they'll go, aren't going to be super far apart pitch-wise. If I did a 10 and a 14 or a 13 and a 16, which are matched toms that we have here, then the pitch at their lowest tuning is going to be further apart than I wanted. I wanted this to be almost more like toms on a keyboard, like they're right next to each other. I want a boomy bass drum, but I can't have it taking over the whole room, and this drum has full heads on both sides. The only other drum we have here that has full heads on both sides is a 24. That's way too much drum for this situation because I want to be able to hit it hard to get articulation through the front head that doesn't have a hole in it. These are all like choices in this manner. Additionally, 2-plies up here because this shell prefers that and it's got die-cast hoops. Thicker G12 single ply down here because it's got triple flange on it and it's generally just a more resonant drum. These two, it doesn't make sense on paper, but it did the sound that I wanted. Lastly, Keplinger snare drum. The Soundgarden snare drum. Why would I do that here? The reason I did it is because I knew I was going to put a big fat snare drum on this. So if this was a chilled out 8-lug wood drum, it wouldn't be loud enough to fit in the mix with these things. So you get a really loud, bright drum, put all this extra plastic on top of it, and it ends up allowing me to play normally and have all of these things sit together correctly in the mix. If you can adopt this idea that it doesn't matter that this is a Pearl and that's from the drum shop and this is a vintage Gretsch, and just understand that we're going after sounds, then all of a sudden you also don't really have to think about having a lot of different kits. You don't have to worry so much about the idea of having to change heads all the time. You can start to look at each of these things as just an instrument that's going to make a sound for you, ignore the rest of it, not stress out about it, and stick to making music. Stick to going after tone and going after things that are going to fit with the music that you want to make. Perfect example, actually, bringing us back to my Gretsch bass drum here. The rest of the drums, well, these two toms are from the studio here. I don't have the rest of this kit. I bought this bass drum on Craigslist, and when I went out there to get it, the guy had a couple of other toms and stuff, but like they weren't sizes that I wanted. I just bought the bass drum because I wanted to have that bass drum sound. So I can't actually use this whole kit under any circumstances because I don't own it. But it also means that, kind of like what I was saying before, I don't ever change the heads on this. I got heads on both sides that I like, and unless they get worn out, it's sort of a studio instrument for me, so I don't play it that often, but unless the heads get worn out, I'm not constantly having to pull things on and off of it. It lives in this controllable boomy zone, and I can just go to it when I want that. Probably the most important thing that is sort of folded into this idea of mixing and matching things is kind of what I did with the bass drum, which is that every time you want a new sound, it doesn't mean that you need to get a whole new kit. It means that, the same way that a lot of us maybe have more than one snare drum, I also have more than one bass drum. I don't always put toms that match the color of whatever bass drum I'm using with it. It's just about the sizes, about the heads, and about the needs of the track or the needs of the gig. And also in the case of this one, it being vintage and stuff, like I wouldn't take this on tour. I kind of want to keep it safe at home. So again, like if I wanted a 20 that I was just going to beat around, I wouldn't want to use this one. Similarly, the 14 floor here goes with a kit that has an 18 and a 10. Those three together give you a really wide pitch range. So if I was going for a really wide pitch range and my kit was 12, 14, 20, it'd be a little bit trickier than if it was a 10, 14, 18, or maybe the 13, 16, 24 that can get really, really wide. Another thing that came up when we were experimenting here with which rack tom to use for this sound is this kit here, the Pearl kit from the studio here, Ben, has a 10. And we tried out the 10 because I was thinking I wanted to go really, really low with it, and ran into two problems. One was it didn't go low enough to go with this 14, and two, it was so resonant in this little node of the room. The snare wire sound from the 10, no matter what I did, was so loud. It took over everything. And after we fussed with it for a while and tried different things and moved it around, we brought another snare drum in. We're like, let's just try the 12. We put it up there. I hit it once, and it was great. And like, cool, awesome. If I'd been married to using a 10, I would have been here all day trying to make that thing work. Instead, it's like, no, I have a sound in my head, and I'm just going to hit things until it's there. And then it was there, and then we could play, and it sounded awesome. Now for the elephant in the room. Why are we so concerned about gear matching? I personally think that it stems from wanting to be taken seriously and wanting to be seen as being professional or being serious or being on top of your game. And I know that if you go back to show bands before there were even records, when you're seeing a band, the glitz and the glamour of the stage, it really matters. And there are still shows like that now that matter. Of course there are. But when we're talking about being slavish to a brand, or to matching finishes, or to certain sizes, or getting what some other person has because you like the sound that they're making, it becomes kind of complicated because there's so much more to it than that. And there are guys on one hand where you see them and they kind of all have the same kit, like when I picture Steve Gadd, I picture that kit that we always see him with. But I've also seen videos of him playing some chrome Gretsches, and he still sounded like him, sounded amazing. A lot of my favorite players mix and match things, Glenn Kochi, Matt Chamberlain, lots of people where it's just like, I'm trying to make a sound, and I need to make that sound. It became a thing for me to realize that if I wanted to stand out, like, I'm not a big chops guy. I don't chase chops, but I want to stand out as a player. I want to get hired. Well, if you start bringing in things like, I don't know, hand percussion or different brands of things, or go for different sorts of tunings, you can start to stand out because of the sound you're making instead of just like outrageous things that you can play. And believe me when I tell you that that gets you noticed differently. Not just gets you noticed, but it gets you noticed by people that care about sound, and they care about art, and they care about music, and less about athletics. I love athletic drumming too, do not get me wrong. I don't have a ton of it in me, but when it comes to making music, especially with people and not just on Instagram, this is a philosophy that I feel like gets me what I want. All right, thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell below so you hear about all of our new videos. We are making more videos here than we ever have before. It's overwhelming and crazy, and the responses have been super, super encouraging. Thanks so much to everyone on the Patreon for helping us do this. Again, there's going to be a lot of content, particularly from this video, when you head over there. Please follow the link below, check it out, see if there's a tier that's right for you. Help us keep this going here. It's really making it possible. And lastly, please come at me with your stories of kit situations like this, or situations where you wished that you'd had more options, even if it was just a better rack tom or a bass drum that didn't have a split head on it or something like that. I am all about the mix and match. I'm all about the sound, and I want to hear about yours.